holiday season. Have you ever enjoyed it, or were you able to communicate with your family members and friends? So, I hope so, because today marks another year of you. Being a student, are you still brave, or you are now braver enough to once again make a change? So, welcome to second quarter of lesson 1 and 2 in oral communication in context. Our topic for today is all about strategies to avoid communication breakdown. So under this, what are the strategies to avoid communication breakdown? So the terms you need to remember: jargon, barrier, breakdown, hinder, self-confidence, misconception, layman's term, and physical restrictions. So those are the terms that you need to take note. So what are the general objectives? So what you will learn in this chapter, you will know what is communication breakdown and the strategies to avoid it. So skills you will use. You use various communication strategies efficiently and effectively to avoid communication breakdown. Next, why is it important? So why do we need to learn these strategies? So putting a communication strategy into place allows you to refer to a standard plan to interact with classmates, teachers, family members, and each other. So a communication strategy ensures that everyone involved has adequate information to communicate about it and maintaining consistency in the workplace and preventing them from ambiguity. In taking to some or in talking to somebody, there are a lot of considerations that you should take note, right? So in order to come up with a healthy and effective communication, you need to take note of the following. So in this lesson, we will be exposed to various communication strategies which can be used efficiently and effectively to avoid this called communication breakdowns. So there are several components in communication. This involves the sender, the channel, the receiver, decoding, and feedbacking. So such components should work in harmonious relationship so that the process of communication can flow harmoniously and understanding of the message can be totally transmitted and successfully received. So as senior high school students, you are expected to know and apply some strategies in communication. So to avoid misconception and breakdown of message. So we are studying this because our main goal is to avoid communication breakdown. So much for that. Let's proceed to our discussion. So there are instances where miscommunication and misunderstanding occur because of certain barriers. So these barriers results to miscommunication and misunderstanding. So to become an effective communicator, you should realize these barriers that hinders the communication process. So later on, we will discuss what are those barriers. This will enable you to control the situation, reset conditions, and start anew. So when you know what barriers hinders you to communicate with other people, you will be able to control it. So you need to simplify the terms that we are going to use. So those are the terms that I mentioned a while ago. So for you to be able to understand more deeply our lesson, I will be giving you the barriers, the examples, and the solution. Number one, but before that, so what is communication breakdown first? So communication breakdown is a situation where the communication takes place between two or more people. So take note of that. The communication breakdowns happens between two or more people. It can be caused by any of the following situation between two parties. Number one, conflicting opinions or actions. So when your actions conflicts with other people or with the opinions of other people, that results in communication breakdown. Number two, unpleasant behavior. When one is so rude, when one is not nice, when one is not listening to you well and the behavior is not well or is not okay, it will result to communication breakdown. Number three and the last one, we ignore or avoid each other. When you ignore someone, when you avoid someone, especially when you have misunderstanding, that will lead you to communication breakdown. So much for that. The school runs on communication, and it's true. It runs efficiently and profitably on good, impactful communication. However, you should take note of this. More than not often, it is a harmful communication breakdown also. Why? Because nothing is exempted in this situation. We starting from going to the school, meeting up the guard, so walking in the pathway with your friends until having lessons with your teacher, you will be encountering communication. So that is why breakdown is not exempted there. So how can you avoid communication breakdown? So these are tips or ways on how to avoid communication breakdown, but before that, I'll just first discuss to you what are the barriers in communication breakdown. We have four barriers, and just take note of this. Number one, emotional barriers. So when you say emotional barriers, you deal with your emotions, right? Example, you are having a bad day or you feel frustrated. When you are having your modules and you've seen that you're having module 1 to 4 and you cannot answer it one at a time, you are being frustrated, right? So what are the possible solutions? You recognize this kind of emotion. Then you ask yourself that you can take a moment to relax or to recognize that you need to finish that modules. So number two example in emotional barriers, you sit in the middle of the class where you think the speaker is boring. So when you're having a meeting or you're having a class discussion and you think that the speaker in front of you is boring. So what is the possible solution there? So you recognize this kind of attitude, you set and reflect on how you can be interested in what is the speaker is pointing out. So your solution is to what? Recognize and also to find ways on how to engage yourself on the situation. Next, use of jargon. So a while ago or earlier last quarter I discussed jargon, and those are the terms or set of specialized vocabulary in a certain field. So an example of this is a certain scientist discussing a certain weather phenomenon with your neighbor who does not know how much about the topic. So when someone is discussing about scientific names or scientific ideas, and when you discuss it to someone, or especially in ordinary people, they won't know that because except if they study scientific terms, but if not, so it's a big question mark. So how do we solve that problem? You avoid communication break to avoid communication breakdown. You need to adjust your language. So sabi ko, when I told you earlier that you need to use layman's term. So these are simple terms or simple words for them to understand. Next, number three, we have lack of confidence. So definitely lack of confidence really affects your communication. Why? Example here, you are asked to share something about your day or your weekend, but you are hesitant because you are shy. So when you lack confidence, there is a barrier. So how do we solve that? Develop self-confidence by joining an organization where you can share and develop your interests. So you just need to join organizations or you just need to look for opportunities in your school or community where you can enhance your abilities or improve your strengths. So next one, the last one with regards to barrier is noisy environment. So example of this, you are having a conversation with some friends when a song was played loudly. So this is an example of noisy environment. What is the possible solution? You recognize that noise is a common barrier. So it is unavoidable. Make some adjustment or ask someone to minimize the volume of the noise, or simply if it's unavoidable, you look for a quiet place or area where you can resume your conversation. So those are the four barriers with regards to communication breakdown. Number one, you have your emotional barriers, it deals with your emotion. Number two, use of jargons. Specialized terms should be in layman's term. Next, lack of confidence. When you are shy, when you are hesitant, you need to adjust yourself, improve your abilities. And when you are in noisy environment, you need to look for a quiet place. So much for that. How do we avoid communication breakdown? So, number one, we implement the following strategies to prevent and avoid communication barriers in so many areas in our life. First, we have your home. Second, we have your school. Third, we have your workplace. And number four, we have your community. So we have 5 ways on how to avoid communication breakdown. First one, we use a common language for communication between all parties to avoid being lost in translation. So there are instances in our life that we are talking to some people, especially ordinary people, and with that, we have forgotten sometimes, especially if we are professionals or we are in a fire class, we forgot that we are using terms in our profession, so or in our own area. So it is much possible that they will be having confusion or lost in translation because they don't know what we are saying about. So further examples, when you are a doctor, when you are not related to science, and you are talking to someone, and you say, you say the scientific name of plants or animals, and you are talking to ordinary people, they will not understand that. Not unless I told you a while ago that they've studied the scientific names. But most of the ordinary people don't know that. So generally, the official house, school, company, and community language should be used. So you take note of this. To avoid communication breakdown, first you should use layman's term or layman's language. Whether you're communicating to other people, whether this is something that you should take into consideration. Who are you talking about? So it provides consistency in the message as well as perceptions. It will be easier for the people to understand what you are saying. Next, you remove distractions. Why? Because it really affects the communication process. As what I said a while ago, noisy environment such as the sounds of the animals, the sound of the construction areas, or the people around you. Whether you're communicating in a person or via email, make sure that you're in a quiet environment. Take note of that. Without what? Any music, external noises, or your colleagues even. So to decipher the message accurately and really listen to what the other party is trying to say. So it is important that when you are communicating to someone, you remove distractions. You go to a quiet place or you minimize others' voice when you are talking to someone. Let them know that you are talking to someone that needs to decipher the message easily. Number three rather, do not burden each other with excessive information or data. What does it mean to not burden each other? So it only means that you don't do information overload. Why? Because not every people or not all people will decipher the message easily. Especially right now, when I say lesson 1 and 2, or when I tackle lesson 1 and 2 of module 1 in one sitting or in one discussion, definitely you will not remember everything, right? So you need not to give excessive information because not all are capable of deciphering the message one at a time. So strategize the information according to its level of importance. So right now, I'll just be discussing lesson 1 because you need to remember the communication breakdowns. Next, be direct and concise in your communication. So the research suggests that while details are important, messages that are short and up to the point are comprehended more easily. You take note of that. Not all informations are necessary. When you say everything you know, there are tendencies or there are instances that the people around you, especially your audience, will not anymore listen to you because they get tired of the repetition that is happening in your speech or on what you are saying. So it's better that although details are important, yes, they support the ideas, but take note that you should make it short direct and concise. So, in short, you make it to the point. There's no other details or extra details, but to the point are comprehensible or are comprehended more easily. So lastly, you do not hesitate to ask questions. Why? Because in asking questions, you will receive answers, right? So it is encouraged by others to do the same. So asking questions, no matter how trivial, eliminates doubts. Why? Because when we ask questions, or when we don't ask questions, we are having confusions, right? So when we ask questions, it eliminates our doubts and fears, and also our misconceptions. So it clears our or the questions in our mind. So this will be in effective and quick manner. So when you ask questions, it eliminates doubts and misconceptions. So to summarize the communication breakdowns, first we have common language, second we have remove distractions, third we have do not burden each other, number four we have be direct and concise, and number five, do not hesitate to ask questions. So I hope that you learned a lot from our discussion for today regarding communication breakdown, and that will be all for today. Our lesson one is how to avoid communication breakdown. And so much for that. Goodbye, grade 11, and thank you for listening.